All right. Welcome to the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. I am your host today, James Barlowe. Got my friend out here in Utah, Leif Thulin. We are going to get to this, and we're going to talk to you about the green room invites that came out on Tuesday night. Stay tuned. All right, big shout out to our first-time listeners. Hey, without further ado, let's get right to it. So the NBA released their green room invites. Usually how it goes, it is based on general managers. I believe they get a list of 25 guys, and who do they think is going to be drafted in the top 20. A green room invite does not necessarily mean that you are going to be a lottery pick or even a first round pick, but this is just kind of, getting a gauge on who has gotten good feedback, who they think is going to go in the first round and potentially the lottery. So if you're invited, great. If you're not, you still may be a lottery pick. We still do not know. Somebody is likely going to be dropping just because this is a wide open draft. But let's just get right to it and we'll share our thoughts. First off, no surprise here. The first two names we have on to the right, if you're watching on YouTube, Alex Sarr, Zachary Reese-Shea. First round picks, likely top 5 picks. Green room invites. I have really nothing to add there. Everybody knew that they were going to be there. They knew they were going to be there. It's just a matter of where these two Frenchmen will be drafted. I've seen a lot of what's the word the smart people say, scuttlebutt. Reese-Shea could end up going number 1 to Atlanta. I didn't realize Atlanta does not have a draft pick next year, so I guess it would make sense for them not to go full blow up, I guess you could say. So the Reese-Shea number 1 is realistic, because then you can just build. I know they do have some trouble on the wing. I believe DeAndre Hunter is a free agent. If not, he is kind of at the end of his deal. My man Bogdan, it's got to be about 31, 32. He's banged up. So I think it's a realistic spot for him. Maybe at 1. I personally wouldn't do it, but if you feel like the Hawks can't reload, or you're kind of hesitant to go full reload, especially with your draft picks being gone, maybe this is what you do. What are your thoughts on Sarr and Reese-Shea green room invites? We knew it was going to happen. But
yeah, neither move me a ton. Like, especially if you're saying, hey, that's the number 1 pick. Reese-Shea is growing on me just because while others I kind of watch more and I think, oh, like there's a flaw that I don't pick up on while watching just like a normal basketball game. But like if you're looking for issues, you look for Reese-Shea's and they're apparent, but they're less problematic. Whereas Sarr, I saw him in person and he was big and he was fluid, but he wasn't particularly athletic. And like he was billed as this amazing defender. Like his comparisons are Jaren Jackson, Jonathan Isaac, Evan Mobley. And I didn't see that type of athleticism from him. So that scared me a little bit because you're not really picking him to be your core of your offense either. And so as I've been reading, like, the reports of, Reese-Shea won, or like, some outlets have had him won for a long time, and maybe they were onto something. Maybe they heard something sooner than the rest of us. I think it's becoming more and more likely that Clint Capella stays. Onyeka Okongwu's already there. And and even if he's not, even if Capella doesn't go, Okongwu does. Like, I don't see Sarr going there as much as it was labeled right away. Like, oh, now he's Trae Young's lob partner. And that like was an appealing fit, but it was not necessarily a fit because of their roster. And you never take a fit at number 1. Like, I understand that. But I think in a draft that's not particularly star-studded, at least to our eyes, maybe you do go with a fit if you're not going to rebuild, like you said. And the point about not having a draft pick makes it more believable that Reese-Shea is hopefully this guy excels in his role type of number 1 pick.
Do you think that two-part question. Is there someone you think that could go number 1, not named Sarr or Reese-Shea? And part 2, if you are just sold on this is not the, you think Reese-Shea is going to go number 1?
Yeah, neither. Neither move me a ton. Like, especially if you're saying, hey, that's the number 1 pick. Reese-Shea is growing on me just because while others I kind of watch more and I think, oh, like there's a flaw that I don't pick up on while watching just like a normal basketball game. But like if you're looking for issues, you look for Reese-Shea and there are apparent, but they're less problematic. Whereas Sarr, I saw him in person and he was big and he was fluid, but he wasn't particularly athletic. And like he was billed as this amazing defender. Like his comparisons are Jaren Jackson, Jonathan Isaac, Evan Mobley. And
draft to have the number 1 pick? Do you trade it if you're the Atlanta Hawks? Maybe trade back for, I don't know, 4 or 8.
I don't think trading back's a bad idea for Atlanta because the board could fall conducively to success for them. Like if Sarr goes 1, if someone trades up for him, Reese falls, and it pushes back either a position of like you could take your pick at the wings, whoever you desire most of the wings. You could maybe take a guy like Castle and maybe move on from DeJounte if there's this rift between he and Trae Young, or there's a lot of things they can do because they do have good players, but they're stuck in no man's land. So I think it really depends the direction of the franchise with the players they already have. And so if you trade, it would be if they've decided, hey, we're either going to blow it up or we're trying to compete, and you think you can get something that helps you compete with the trade along with the pick that you get, presumably with that package for number 1. So I'm torn. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to go other than Sarr, Sarche. I mean, maybe Klingon if someone really loves him, but I wouldn't do that. But that's basically my opinion is if the Atlanta Hawks have decided this is the direction we're going to go, either bad or good, that's the only way in which the trade makes sense to me.
Understood. Speaking of Klingon, he got a green room invite to nobody's surprise. Also, his teammate, running partner from Connecticut, Stephon Castle, got a green room invite. I don't know if you've been out of the country, so I definitely hope you weren't looking at any draft stuff. But I've moved Castle to my number 2 pick to Washington. I'm sold on his playmaking, being a big wing that's going to be able to handle the ball. And in the draft where there is uncertainty, I feel like I'm going to roll the dice on his upside with him being very good in pick and roll. And obviously the jump shot is going to have to improve, but I'm just buying him getting to his spots. I know we can't put too much stock into the combine shooting because it's different. It's not a real setting, but he did shoot the ball well. But I'm buying Castle at number 2. I've seen Klingon at number 2 as well. Really quick, Leif, your thoughts on Klingon and Castle?
I'm moving Castle up as well. Klingon seems to be getting all this love of, hey, like this guy is the guy, but what has he done to impress? Are they rewatching UConn film of where he's blocking shots and kind of Roy Hibbert verticality? Like that defense is good. Like we knew it was good. So I don't know why he's getting all this fanfare of, oh my gosh, he's moving up. It's not like he's knocking people's socks off shooting threes, because that's, even if he does well, people are going to live with that on the other end. Like, great, you're shooting 35 from 3. Wonderful. Like, take that one. So I don't know why he's the buzz, but I think Castle, between you, me, I've talked to a few other guys that maybe aren't as big on the platform, but really care about the draft and watch a lot of college basketball. His prototype, there's just different methods for him to succeed. And I think in a draft where there's a lot of kind of specialists that you're hoping can become great at their craft to become good, I think his versatility is actually something that I value more. And I've realized that the more I've watched these other guys where I see glaring deficiencies, and his deficiencies don't necessarily impact his or mitigate his impact on the game. And so I'm moving him up as well.
I agree 100%. When we get we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to talk about a couple of the G League guys. But first, let me tell you about BetterHelp. So, BetterHelp is, well, let me tell you about BetterHelp. Obviously, they are our sponsor, but BetterHelp is here for us because we all carry around different stressors, big and small. All right, when we keep them bottled up, it can start to affect us negatively. Therapy is a safe space to get things off your chest and to figure out how to work through whatever's weighing you down. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched up with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for your everyday to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So before we took a break, we had teased, we talked about green room invites, in particular, the G League guys. So no surprise here, but at the same time, we can talk about it a little later. Some guys that may be still in the green room a little later than what they thought. Manas Buzelis, Ron Holland. So Twitter, whatever you want to call it, X, I'm always call it Twitter. They say Ron Holland's stock is sliding. He may fall to 11. He worked out for, I believe, the Heat. He worked out for the Lakers at 17. What are your thoughts on Ron sliding, and where do you have him at?
I think he's going to slide, but 17 seems like a deep dip. I was pretty high on Ron to start this cycle. Like he was, in my opinion, as we entered October, November, he was going to be the number one pick in my mind, and I didn't think it was a strong class, but I figured, he's got these traits that can influence the game, and he'll improve the jump shot. Well, the more I've watched, and the G League I watched less than college basketball, so I feel like I've been playing a little catch up. I watch and I see more of that Josh Okogie that I fear, and that's not a slight to Josh Okogie. He has a valuable role in the NBA when he plays. Like he's not the type of guy that you can play enormous minutes because he's limited on one side of the basketball, and that's offense. But he's excellent defensively. But you don't want a lottery pick to be in terms of this as a defensive specialist who really struggles on the opposite side of the basketball. And so I watch him and I say, well, he scored 20 a game, yet somehow I liken him to a one side of the floor player. And so I have to drop him. I'm working on amending my latest big board because as you mentioned, I was gone. So I'm catching up even further. I'm hoping to do the next big board and then one more right before the draft actually happens. And I think Holland will be a little further down because his safety of a pick isn't that great, and his ceiling is a little lower than I initially perceived.
I have him in my latest going, I believe, 10th to your Utah Jazz.
I'd be okay. I'd be okay with a shot there. I'd be okay, but it does scare me a bit. And considering I had him at 3 at one point in this process, being scared of taking that guy at 10 is indicative of the slide seems to be real.
I feel like with Utah, it's a good spot for him to land and develop. I think if he goes earlier to like a Charlotte or Detroit, I don't think you're going to get the best out of him, at least on both sides of the ball. You're going to ask him to defend, obviously, and make plays, but if he's in Charlotte, he's playing off the ball full time, right? And that's his biggest weakness, which is shooting the basketball. Now, he'll be able to slash and run with LaMelo, but you're almost turning him into a stand in the corner guy because they still have Miles and Brandon Miller is there. So I don't think that's a good fit. Detroit is similar in a sense that he's not a strong shooter, and that's the last thing they need is another guy who might not be able to shoot. So I think in Utah, he would get the opportunity to develop, play with another Dallas kid in Keontae. But we'll see if he falls that far. But speaking of his running mate, Matas, that's another guy that I have sliding. I had him mocked at 11 to Chicago. The more I watch him, I don't want to say the less that I like him. It's just I'm not seeing enough of the traits that I wanted to see from him going into the season. I do buy him being a good athlete, but a shot creator for himself, I feel like he's going to struggle. And in Chicago, I think when Chicago should clear the decks, that would be a good opportunity for him to develop. But if you're asking him to play for the Bulls and they still bring back Levine, they bring back DeRozan, and he has to stand in the corner and shoot, I'm just really not buying him as a shooter. I believe it was you that told me that he really wasn't a shooter and that his best shooting season was his last year at Sunrise, and that's scary.
Because I was not impressed with the shot, man. Yeah, and you bring up a really important point. Like most of his high school season, where people are probably like, "Oh, wow, that's a beast. Like he's 6'10", he's a guard. Like let's play off because we're scared of like what he can do as a slasher." He still shot badly, which is alarming. You rarely see these prospects shoot badly in high school. And I understand Sunrise actually plays good competition, but still, the method applies there. And his shot, it to me is like this. It's not like broken in terms of fluidity, but it's not smooth either.
It's a little rigid.
It starts like off to the side of his right, like the right side of his face, which, is pretty normal, but then it moves up and out like further to the right and in front of his face too. And it just looks like it's like a push shot almost from no matter how he shoots it, but it's slow getting up there. Whereas a push shot typically is just like this quick, like under duress shot. Like you have to avoid a player. So it's not good that his actual set shot resembles something of an improvisation.
Yeah. I think he's going to go higher than what I have mocked, but I'm cool on mine. So I had it at 1.5, but the more I dig into it, the more that I'm questioning what does he do well at the next level. All right, so the next set of guys we'll talk about, and I think this one is really a surprise. Devin Carter got a green room invite. I know his name has been buzzing a lot. And then also Cody Williams, he got a green. I'm not surprised about Cody, but Devin Carter definitely is a surprise to me. What are your thoughts?
I'm not shocked because the green room is the top 20. Like if this were like a top 10 exclusive thing, and I understand he's in the first 12. Like I understand that's why it's a big thing. But I feel like there's a safety net with him, whereas a few people, they're sliding and or they already kind of know they're going in the top 5. And so he's one of those guys that, okay, if you're projecting a top 20 guy, you just shoe in the money. He's going to be a lottery pick, probably the 8 through 14, in my opinion. So it doesn't stun me he's in the top 12, but I think the fact that his name's buzzing, like you said, his workouts appear to be going well. Obviously, it's kind of been, at least I haven't been doing too much research of how each person's workouts are going, and but there haven't been that many leaks of, oh, this guy killed it. And so I wonder if he's kind of the most or I guess the least subtle of the, hey, this guy killed it, by him getting that nod from the general manager. So not stunned, but happy for him, because he's a guy that I thought was excellent at Providence and in a role that he developed into like being a star when he's like a grit and grind type of guy. Like he everyone says Reed Shepherd's Derek White and all these comps, but if anyone's Derek White, it's Devin Carter.
I agree. I need to get back into his film. I still have him in the 20s. I mean, just because he's older, and it's 1 year of him being a very good shooter. But yeah, he's like the only one, and it is a good point that, like, normally you hear about, oh man, so and so, he killed the workout. He killed the workout. And like, he's the only one that we've heard that's had like a really good workout. Cody Williams, your thoughts on him getting the green room invite? I mean, it's probably not a surprise. Most people have him as a top 12 guy. I believe I have him 16 right now on my latest mock to Philadelphia. But, him getting a green room invite doesn't surprise me. I still think that there are concerns with just what he does well at the next level, and him being, on the slender side with okay ball skills just kind of like scares me. But what are your thoughts on Cody Williams?
Yeah, he's a guy that I've had the most trouble pinpointing where I think he needs to work the most and why it's not working. Like sometimes it's obvious, like this guy can't shoot and here's the issue. Well, his shot was good, but I don't think his shot's actually good. Like he shot 42% from 3, but I think he's a reluctant shooter, and that speaks volumes to me. I think Cody Williams has a skill set at 6'8" point guard that should be really good, but at the same time, he doesn't quite have the twitchiness or or even wiggle that you'd expect from someone who is better going downhill. And so I'm puzzled by him. And he's a guy that if the Jazz take, I'd be happy because I think there's a lot of tools to work with. But I'd be a little scared that he's probably better on defense in year one than he is on offense. And he's not necessarily a great defender. And that's like, and I'm not saying the Jazz want to win right away, but it's an intriguing thing to have more faith in the side of the ball that most people would say in college he was less good at, just because probably effort, than like his archetype is have the ball in his hands and be 6'8", and that concerns me a little bit.
Yeah, like have the ball in his hands and he's 6'8", but I think he had a negative assist to turnover ratio, and like you said, he's just not he's not shifty. It's get to your right hand, and he won't have the strength advantage. He didn't have it in Colorado, but he definitely won't have it at the next level. So it's like it's going to take him some time to like develop, but also will he be able to like develop those ball skills? All right, we got a few more guys to talk about, but first let me tell you about FanDuel. So it's summertime. I mean, it's baseball, the NBA finals, and more, and you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. All right. So last segment we talked about Matas Mazelis and Ron Holland. We also talked about Devin Carter and Cody Williams. And this time, to close it out, this third segment, we're going to speak about, again, guys who aren't surprisingly getting green room invites, but Dalton Knecht, Tijan Salon. Thoughts on Dalton Knecht, and where do you have Tijan probably in your latest mock that you're going to do?
I'm definitely not shocked by either of these guys. I think both go within the top 10. Tijan is rising up my board. I had him, I won't say like early in the process, but around the combine, I've had him 12 or 13 the entire year since November. I just was intrigued with his upside. And then I watched a few games at the end of his regular season, then of his playoff game, in which he was the best player on the floor in the fourth quarter of that game. And I moved him up to 8 in what I published, I want to say 10 days, maybe 5-7 days after that game. I think he'll likely end up for me 6. I'm working through the board. The rationale is I'm an upside guy. Let me just clarify that for people listening. If you're going to tell me that there's players that if they pan out at the best likelihood and of what their role can be at the NBA in a class devoid of like clear-cut stars, you might as well say Salon's a top 5 pick in terms of that type of upside. Now, I think he'll probably be a 3-and-D that's not a great shooter to begin with, but he's got energy. And I know he's a raw defender, but he's got the tools. He's got the tools to me to become a good defender. And he wasn't scared to take big shots in the playoffs. And he was knocking down threes. And is he a great shooter? No. Is he an improving one who I think is going to become more fluid and he's enormous? He's not just like a 6'8", oh, hey, like, look at that guy. He's huge. He's big and he's young. Those type of players don't grow on trees. And in a class that I don't have that much faith in a lot of these people's strength of the skill sets, his curiosity for me of like what he could become because his not well-rounded strengths are close to that of people who are more polished and have these such quote unquote strengths. That's why I'm pushing him up the board. And then Knecht, I think, is probably going to end up 9 or 10 on my board.
Yeah, again, I'm not surprised with either. I've been up and down on Salon. I do have Knecht at 13. I just right now feel like Jalen Tyson's a better basketball player than him. I don't think Tyson's going to go ahead of him, but if I'm in charge, I'm taking Jalen Tyson. I believe he's 2 years younger. I think he does everything just as well as Knecht does, but that's just me. Next up, Jacoby Walter, Reed Shepherd. I will say Jacoby, well, again, this is a top 20, but he, of the guys that we have mentioned, he is the one that I do have, I believe, the lowest. Reed, obviously, is a no-brainer. He was going to get he was going to get a green room invite. That was, yeah. But
yeah, Jacoby shocked me a little bit because if you were to look at talent and like this guy can shoot out coming into this year, he's definitely a top lottery pick. But if you watch Baylor, it's the numbers of his shot don't bother me at all because I think he's actually one of the better shooters in this class, like upper echelon. What shocks me is he didn't have any wiggle, and he's not a point guard. So if he's just a pin down shooter who shot 32%, and I understand I have faith in his shot, that's kind of a limiting factor. And is he a good athlete? I think he's all right, but then why is there no speed or tenacity to his game? And so I'm lower. I'm dropping him as well. I think I'm 18 or something like that on my board. It's an interesting one. I understand why he's in the top 20, but he's definitely a shocker of the 12.
Yeah. It's funny because he's a pin down shooter who didn't shoot the ball well, not a great athlete, but somehow shot like 5 free throws a game somehow. So like it was weird watching because you'd be like, man, this dude doesn't get to the basket, but you look up and he's getting to the foul line somehow.
I think Baylor just plays a lot of possessions. Like I thought of that myself. Like they play a little quicker, and at the end of games he shoots them. Like that has to inflate it because you watch him and he doesn't get to the basket to draw fouls. Like it's
2 dribbles.
Yeah, it's a horizontal 2 dribbles and then maybe a floater, maybe a jump stop, and I don't know. I personally, if you were to pick him, you'd basically be saying you want a 6'4", 6'5", 2 guard who's a adequate shooter. I'd say above average in the draft class, but adequate to the NBA level based on the resume. And obviously that can improve, and I think it will. I think he'll be an above average NBA shooter. That's a slightly below average NBA defender, and he's not huge. So that is it's a concerning thing if you're picking him high, but if you get him at 17, 18, that's a good pick to me.
I have him going to Cleveland if they decide to move on from Garland. I think it works in Cleveland. So we mentioned before, or actually let me put you on the spot. Of the guys that we mentioned here, who do you think would slide out of the top 20 if possible?
I'd say Walter's the most likely to fall out of the top 20. He didn't impress me a ton, and I don't think at the combine his measurements wowed anyone. Like I know they weren't bad, but you typically have to wow to improve your stock by being at the combine. Whether you either shoot the ball crazy well or you test insanely well, and so he'd be the guy. The one that would be interesting to see is if Holland starts to slide, and then you have the spell of teams that want kind of win now players that they believe they're on the cusp, or like the Sacramento Kings, who were just recently a 3rd seed in the playoffs, and this year they want to run it back and figure out what can help them. If those type of teams pass on Holland, should he make it out of the top 12, I think he's got a chance, but I just can't imagine he goes past 15.
I agree with that. Yeah, Ron in Sacramento. Yeah, that doesn't fit their timeline. And they need a wing, but I just don't think that he fits their timeline. Before we go, Rob Dillingham and Nikola Topic were not invited only because they haven't passed their physical testing yet. I believe Rob's is on Friday. I don't know when Nikola is and if he will even receive a green room because he's obviously hurt, but he may, do his from his couch in Serbia. So, I mean, it's all right.
I imagine he'll receive an invite. I don't know if he's going to show up top-ish because I don't think there's a way he falls out of the top 12, and they typically want to represent it properly. So even if he's not able to do the running portion of his workout, I'm pretty sure he'll get some sort of exemption enabling him to be in the green room.
Yeah, I agree. Well, hey, that is it for our show. But before we go, let me tell you that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On Plus, our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Well, hey, that concludes our show. I'm James Barlowe. This is my guy, Leif, and we are out.